So in this last video, I'm going to talk about something that really makes strategic leadership a lot of fun, which is the fact that you have multiple audiences that want different things. This particular textbook, the one you've purchased, does not do the best job of discussing these stakeholder groups, so I import a bunch of material from somewhere else. This idea of stakeholders is people who are affected by a firm and want to have a say in what it does. Where this book falls down a little, our textbook falls down a little bit, is it doesn't logically group them. And so that's what the slide does for you. It says, first of all, you've got your capital market stakeholders. These are the people that are relying on the firm to make a profit, whether they are shareholders, debt holders, something like that. They're very profit motivated for the firm. And then down the lower part, you have the organizational stakeholders. These are the employees of the firm at all levels. And what do they want? Well, they want a good place to work that is going to stay around. So they need it to be successful enough that people continue to buy their products and provide the necessary capital. But primarily, they tend to be focused on what's good for us. And then the third stakeholder group in the middle, the product market stakeholders, they're a little bit of everything else. But these are, A, very importantly, your customers. B, your suppliers, community, regulators. It's kind of the rest of the cats and dogs. And then you get into that famous question of, are they complementary or competitive? And in the perfect world, we say we take great care of our employees. They produce great products that produce things that customers love, which in turn generate high profits for our business. And this great circle to the moon. And I don't want to say that that's not possible or that isn't the goal, but it's really, really hard and not very commonly found. So in the bottom screen, I've got your little take on Amazon. If you look in the picture, you'll see it's Amazon.de. This is Germany, where they have a unionized workforce, and basically the workers in the warehouse are protesting over working conditions. Well, what do they want? Less work, higher pay. What's going to happen if they do that? Well, it's going to either lower profits, which Amazon really has virtually no profits as is, or they're going to have to raise prices, which are going to make the consumers unhappy. So you see, it's this delicate balancing act, which is why sometimes CEOs have to trade things off, and they have to pay attention to one at the expense of another. So then the question becomes, how do I do that? And here's one model that I think is very useful, and that's to sort out the power, urgency, and legitimacy. And you sort out how much power various entities in the stakeholder groups have. Some groups, by definition, are always powerful. Are almost always powerful. Excuse me, the shareholders are almost always powerful. The customers are almost always powerful. Employees often are, but probably not percentage-wise as high as those two former groups. So power is just basically, bam, can I punch you in the face and make you do what I want you to do? An example of a group that has high power would be, say, pilots in an airline. Because if the pilots go on strike, the airline's grounded. It's not going to work. So they, by definition, have a lot of power. Although they have their own weaknesses, when they're not flying, they're not making any money. So it is always nuanced. So then you get into the question of urgency, and this term is very poorly used, even though it's in the model. So let me tell you what urgency is really. It is how excited is that stakeholder group about this issue. So you may have the very powerful shareholders that just don't care about this issue. And therefore, even though they have a lot of power, they're not excited about it. And so the epitome of this is let the sleeping dog lie. If they're not upset about it, I might not have to do anything about it, or at least at a minimum, their power is not relevant to me. Lastly is legitimacy, because this is how less powerful groups generate power, because their position is seen as legitimate. So if I go back to those Amazon workers, let's say that they were able to say, working in Amazon is a terrible place to work in the warehouse. We are overworked and we are underpaid. If that position was seen as legitimate by a lot of Amazon customers, and they then stopped using Amazon because of the worker treatment, then through that legitimacy, they've co-opted other people's power, and they're able to exert power when it wouldn't necessarily seem like it. So this idea of legitimacy is, who else can they bring in on their side? How much is this issue likely to excite others that are currently, quote unquote, sleeping dogs. This is a very handy tool. And we're going to work some exercises in class, but you're going to see this in the front page of the Wall Street Journal, where companies are struggling with these issues and they are scoping out who's got power, who's got urgency, and who's got legitimacy. I don't accept or expect that many of you are coming to this idea of trade-offs very happily, because we all want to be all things to all people. It's just one of our basic human leanings. But you're going to find that, particularly when it comes to like the business strategy game, if you try to offer the highest quality shoe at the lowest price with the most advertising, you're going to fail miserably. You can't offer typically highest quality at the lowest price. Can't be done. So you've got to figure out how you're going to trade those things off to include how you do things in your value chain. And I'll make a prediction now. The ultimate winner in the business strategy game will be the teams that made the wisest trade-offs in their value chain. But one of the things that is in itself is a trade-off is this idea of long versus short term. So you have some people that have told their investors this is a long-term deal. Jeff Bezos at Amazon is brilliant about that, has a very high stock price and no profit to speak of given his revenue. And he says, this is a long-term play. We're going for total world domination. You're going to make your money in the out years, and people buy off on that. Other firms have to be very sensitive to the short term because the stock market isn't as convinced of their long-term viability. Last pitch to close this thing out. Strategic leaders. I want you to increasingly be looking for your opportunity to be a strategic leader, because they can exist at many layers in an organization. So here's my definition of what it takes to be a strategic leader. You have to have some degree of autonomy in your job and some control over the resources. And if you have that thing, some degree of autonomy and some degree of control over resources, then you're a strategic leader. And these are the things that strategic leaders do. They build a vision for their people to get the most out of the people that work for them and the resources that are available to them. They typically do that by building stretch goals. They do a great job of using what they know and getting the most out of their resources, and they tend to be innovative. And I'm going to tell you right up front, at the end of this course, you're going to want the skills where you're confident you can do that, because you want to be valuable either in your own company or in somebody else's company such that they pay you more. Be that kind of person, because that's value. So to wrap it up, strategy is dynamic. We've looked at a couple of different definitions. You're going to see in the textbook analysis, decision, actions. I think position, trade-off, fit is great. Even though I've poo-pooed mission and vision statements a little bit, they are important in a lot of situations, and when put together with the right leadership can make a powerful difference. And then there's that issue of, as a strategic leader, you've got to think about who's competing for your time and interests, and how do you balance those. In the next chapter, we're going to get right into this idea of analysis. I hope that you're excited about the course. I sure am.